Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
yeah, this is the talk from concept to Steam demo, how not to make a game. Um, I'm gonna start with a little bit of introduction on who we are, even though it was given. Yeah, we are Iron Blood Games. We were formed in like 2017 when we were graduating from SLGDC, and officially we registered as a business in like 2020. Our team currently consists of myself and Bupathi Sangeet. We are a two-man game dev team, and our biggest title that we're working on right now is called Warfleet Captains. That was initially, when it was concepted, called Project Little Big Warships. Now, some of the other titles that we released actually when we were starting out as game devs was Space Gunner, which was like a hyper casual score attack game for mobile, and we also made a game called Bonka, which is like an entertainment game. These two games we kind of made it mostly to get some practice in, so that we had confidence that we can make a game from concept to full product release, and we managed to do it. So we felt good about starting working on our big project. However, there was going to be some problems. Now, the significance of this title is that, as you can like guess, Warfleet Captains was technically like started concepting around 2017, and it took us nearly a decade to get this game into a playable version to go public. So why is that? What happened? And how did we survive for so long to manage to get it there? We're about to tell you everything that we did wrong, so you can be more informed. And this is going to come as a important kind of lesson for anyone who's in the game dev scene in Sri Lanka, so that you can kind of avoid the pitfalls that we just repeatedly fell into, and you can make sure you get into market without making the same mistakes we did. So you'll be more successful, hopefully, after this. I'm gonna play a small trailer of what our game is about. Don't forget to use your castle protocol, your fourth one, which makes you go invulnerable. Right now, here, have the 1 million missile.
What kind of tractor beam range was that?
Oh my god!
Oh, I'm in a bad spot.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, what?
So, this is the part I'm going to go over the long history, right? What is Warfleet Captains? Warfleet Captains is basically a sci-fi fleet combat game that puts you in like the captain's chair of massive, powerful warships, and you get to take part in cool fleet battles. Now, when we set out to make Warfleet Captains, you might be wondering like why I came up with a game like this in particular. I was actually inspired by the fact that at the time in 2017, while I was at SLGDC, the two most common games that I was playing at the time was called World of Warships and War Thunder. And I'm also a big fan of sci-fi games, so I kind of thought, why not have World of Warships experience but in space? And I was trying to make that work. I also kind of believed strongly in the capabilities of mobile phones, because at that time I was seeing how the mobile phone was getting more and more powerful over time, and I kind of believe that they will be the handheld consoles of the future, right? And I thought maybe it's time that I also joined the small group of games that were starting to come out for mobile that were giving more traditional gameplay experiences rather than the hyper casual stuff that we see that are the most popular on mobile. So this is the kind of potential I wanted to tap into. And while I was making this GDD for this game and kind of planning things out and fleshing it out, I came across two games that released in 2018 called Fractured Space and Dreadnought. These two games actually came out on PC, and it kind of validated the game design I was already trying to make for mobile, which is they were also doing this live service, free to play game where you captain massive warships in sci-fi battles with all these epic, graphics and whatnot. But what it told me is that if a studio is willing to put millions of dollars into a game and bring it out into market, and they also have a strong fan base following the game that are excited about it, it must be a successful game design. I need to capitalize on it. So I kind of convinced everyone, let's get working on this quickly and let's get it out to market. Now, quickly we found that the whole platform that we picked, the kind of game we were trying to make was way beyond the scope of what we were capable of making. We were just students coming out of graduation, and to be honest, even though I thought making a game for mobile is going to be super duper easy because, the game design can be streamlined to be super basic. We don't need to have a large depth in the complexity of the gameplay mechanics, and we can keep our 3D art as simple as possible, making it very streamlined and fast to get it all made maybe within 6 months. This is like the naivety of a student that has not enough experience working on games, and we found out the hard way. In fact, there was another lesson that we were going to learn much more harder, which was not only was that multiplayer a complex, was very complex to get made, it was also very costly. Because live service games have to pay servers, and these servers upkeep is way beyond anything that you would imagine, and those costs meant that we were kind of working our way into a dead end where we needed to have backing from investors and publishers. There is no way this game could be coming out to mobile without the backing of publishers, and we realized this really, really deep into the game's development. But we still kept on going, because we're stubborn like that. And we thought even if we can't get this game to launch properly as a product, we'd at least have, a portfolio piece. But what we found was that this game is going to take us years and years of development time, and it's going to cost us a lot. One thing that happened to us as the game was being developed was that we went from like a 5-man team down to a 2-man team within like the span of 6 months. People had to leave, and to be honest, we even had to shelve the game ourselves for years on end, simply because we had to go work on careers and getting an income for ourselves. Fortunately enough, the two of us were actually working in the games industry itself when we went off to find income. And in my case, for example, I was fortunate to get hired by a European game dev studio called Kevru Games LLC, and there I was a level designer working under the mentorship of people that had even worked on titles such as the Stalker series, Cyberpunk, and the Metro games, right? So I learned a lot under them, and we kind of leveled up our skills really strongly. But this is the way it went all the way up to 2024, and AI was starting to disrupt our industry, and it kind of messed with a lot of the studios, right? And the game dev studio that I was working in was also impacted, and they sent me on like permanent leave. And when I saw it coming, I kind of got an opportunity to reach back out to Achila Bupathi here, and we kind of decided we're going to just work full time on Warfleet Captains from 2024 onwards, and we're just going to stick to that same original plan. We're going to try and finish this game up, and we're going to look for a publisher. Things went really well for us in the case of returning back to Warfleet Captains. We actually managed to make the game work really well on mobile. Eventually, it ran solid, and we were doing play tests. And by middle of 2025, we were just looking to start our search for publishers and investors. It was this time that I came across a platform called Blue Ocean Games and their Rising Tides Challenge. If you didn't know about Blue Ocean Games and the Rising Tides Challenge, it's basically a platform that is like a venture capital fund that is there to support indie game developers. And what they're looking for is promising games, and they have their Rising Tides Challenge. In there, gamers get to vote, gamers of their community at least get to vote on these upcoming titles by indies, and whoever wins have a chance of securing up to 100,000 US dollars of funds from these people. So we decided to take part in this, and I'm just going to say it outright, we never won, but that was also because we were putting a mobile game into a indie challenge that actually turned out to be all about Steam games. They said, look, we don't really have a particular rule of what game platform the game's coming on, but just be aware that everyone that's voting here are looking forward to PC games, so you might not get the votes. That's fine. That's not the important point here. The actual like pivot that happened to us was when we got the opportunity to talk with one of the partners of Blue Ocean Games, this guy called Richard. He's like very well versed in the games development market, and he held one-on-one talks with all of the indies that were taking part in the challenge in 2025, and eventually we got to have our conversation together. When he listened to our journey so far, and he was just surprised that we managed to survive as long as we did, he just laid it out straight for us and just gave us the brutal truth of it. We just had no chance of making this game get any investors' interest simply because we were two indies that were untested. We don't have massive portfolios backing us, at least having worked on like some high-end projects. We were basically nobodies, and we needed them to spend couple of $100,000 maybe in the development cycle, and then millions of dollars in server costs and marketing just to get this game to be successful on the mobile live marketplace. It is just not feasible. We will just have no chance in this. And he was right, you know, and what he suggested to us is pivot right now, switch this game to be a PC game, release on Steam, and get the game out as soon as you can. And because the PC market is still a viable space for indies to be seen, it's not as busy as the mobile market. There's just too much noise in the mobile market, while the PC market, even though it has grown beyond 2017 like rapidly, it still is possible for indies to just be spotted and go viral and all that stuff. So it's a very viable space. Do it, and we will have a chance to at least launch the game ourselves. And we realized that was the truth, right? So we immediately worked on porting the game to Steam. And to be honest, it's Bupathi who is kind of a wizard. He ported the game within like 3 months in from being a mobile game to working brilliantly on Steam. We did a bunch of changes as well, like certain visual upgrades as much as we can. We polished the game a little bit more. We even added a few extra features here and there, and one of the best things that we did is make sure that the game ran universally on controllers as well as mouse and keyboard. Now, while we were doing this, we were also doing our social media, and it's starting to look really good for us right now, right? So let me just go over like the biggest mistakes that we made. When we were concepting Warfleet Captains, it was initially concepted as a multiplayer, live service, free-to-play game. Please don't do this as indies, right? You would have heard what I just said about scoping things in a realistic manner. Just do your research and make sure that you know all the costs that are involved when you're setting out to make your game. We didn't. It was a big mistake. One other factor that you need to keep in mind is, as indies, you might form a team that are multiple individuals, but just be aware that as indies, when you're making games, you're working on zero income and you're not going to be able to have reliable teammates sticking around all the time, and you need to be very pragmatic with your game's development. What I mean by that is just make sure that in the worst case scenario, whatever game that you just designed and committed to make, you can make it within, like, the scope is within that you can make it yourself if you have to, if the worst scenario comes, right? We also made this mistake where we kind of developed our game as if it was like a funded studio would. What I mean by that is, like, we went through these phases, like, oh, the prototyping phase and then our production phase and so on and so forth. And in the prototype phase, we were having absolute crap code that couldn't be used. Once we validated that the game's gameplay loop was fun, we had to go back and scrap all that code, rebuild it again. We had to do this kind of multiple times, and even now Bupathi is working with really badly coded underlayer that is this is just not a way an indie should be kind of making their game. Whatever game that you're making, even though you're validating your prototype, just make sure you code it in a neat way that you can, once you figure out if your game's gameplay loop is working well, you can just expand on it without having to just scrap everything and start from zero. We as indies are always against time, and that, like, being efficient is very, very important. Also, having no social media presence can be a huge crutch. Start talking about your games as soon as possible, right? So these were the mistakes we made. No social media presence, cascading issues with costs, life careers and such. And, going from a 5-man team to a 2-man team, and then the scope just balloons. It's crazy hard, and that is exactly what led us to having our game be something that we were hoping to be done, at least having a vertical slice in 6 months. We ended up with a project that dragged on for a decade. We did do a few things right. We planned every aspect of our game pretty well. We maintained a really solid GDD that was evolving over time as we changed scopes and streamlined things. This meant that anyone who jumped in to try help us in our project from time to time can just hit the ground running. We just need to... Oh, great. Fantastic. So we also tracked our tasks, using Trello and project management, and we kept our eyes on the changing market all the time. We were aware of how things were evolving, and that was actually a very strong point for us, realizing how live service games, only the big players in the space or well-funded players were surviving. We also, when we had to shelve our games for years on end, we actually went and worked within the industry itself. This meant that we always kind of gained experience in our skill set. So when we returned back to the game's development, we got to do things right. We got to work on our game with, like, a better perspective or just a better skill set overall. So this is the current roadmap that we're under right now, right? We're at the demo phase, but we have a long way to go, all the way up to next fest in June. The strategy is to evolve the game and put in a bunch of features that will really flesh out the gameplay for the fans. We're actually doing far better than we thought. Our wishlist broke past 1,000 just today. Our social media metrics are on the up, and we also have a Discord community because of all that marketing we started doing early on in 2025. And all of the fans of the previous 2 games, Dreadnought and Fractured Space, are starting to congregate in our Discord, looking forward to the release of this game, and they're also giving their feedback and being really involved. So we're actually having a pretty strong community. So this is looking really promising for us, and we're hoping to at least make something from this game. So what is the takeaway or conclusion that I have for all of you? Scope correctly. Make sure that whatever game that you're setting out to make is something within your capacity to make. Also, we also would like you to really validate your idea before you commit to making a finished game, which is find out if your game is popular amongst people. You can test this out on social media or even on itch.io, for example, which is a free platform. And the rule of thumb from my research on Reddit says that if your game is getting around 2,000 downloads and a bunch of positive comments, your game's prototype at least, on itch.io, This means you can actually take it to Steam and you have a good chance of making some money from the game. So do that. You have to, of course, manage your costs, and what I mean by that in our case is like really research and find out what are the actual costs of bringing your game out. Are there hidden server costs that you weren't aware of? Because you might quickly find yourself hitting a dead end before you can even get the game out. Make sure this doesn't happen to you. Timelines. Try to keep your games within a 6-month kind of window. This is kind of a good rule of thumb for any indies and small game studios. Try to get your game from concept to like an early access or a playable demo or a vertical slice, or better yet, a product within a 6-month cycle. This enables you to go and either succeed fast or fail fast and then move on to the next project, right? We haven't done this, and now all our eggs is in this one basket. It needs to do something, and it needs to do something when we release it. So we're kind of, a cornered dog, and we're fighting for our lives right now. Also, marketing. Do not leave it to the last second. Start talking about your games as early on as possible, and market your game on like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of them. Just blast it out, create shorts, make videos, create devlogs. Just talk about your game as simple as you can, even from the start. As soon as you have a prototype, go talk about it. And that kind of wraps things up, to be honest. And I have a few bonus tips, which is, play more games, grow your experience of what is out there, and try to find trends and niches. When you play more games, you will see what's trending and what's popular, and sometimes that can actually inspire you to come up with game ideas that you would like to play within those trends and niches. And usually that has been the success for some of these indies, making games that other people haven't had a chance to experience. And of course, learn to speak to the global community. Whatever game that you make it accessible to the global community. Don't make it really obscure or a little too exotic. Try to make it really accessible to them, and that way it'll just directly convert to sales, to be honest. And that kind of wraps up my talk. I wish everyone the best of success, and I hope your games can kind of come out to the market a little bit more efficiently. Now you know what not to do when trying to release your game. Thank you.